Literally means almost all of the people who are able to spend in India have a Facebook account. Fair enough, right? No, fair enough an assumption for the business purpose. Reverse may not be true, obviously, and so on. So now the second portion is write down, again one more page, write down very specific information about which information is useful for me. Making sense? So you have done the first part. Second part is which information is useful for me. And CMO, please take charge of your company. Interesting, there are thousands of tools on the internet. I end up using a lot of tools. There's a beautiful tool for all the product designers. It's called business model canvas. Like I told you, designers cannot think without the business perspective, right? So once you know the business perspective and the designers, then you become a complete designer. Is my thesis. I could be wrong. So this is a beautiful tool that is handed over by Strategizer. We'll try and see. I'll just try and explain the tool. So it's a simple sheet of paper having 6, 7, 8, 9 rectangles, right? So in order to make a map of my business strategy, I could probably use this tool and clearly say that. So the first section, this section over here, is customer segments. So I should clearly know what are my customer segments. I heard from most of you guys, you are already over here, right? Try and identify your customer segments. And the more breakdown of the segments will help you much more. So for example, the tax department was discussing employed people versus self-employed. Wow, that's a great categorization, but you don't stop at that level. So try and categorize it more, try and break it down more. There are a number of ways to look at the customer segments, right? So customer segments could be looked upon for you, for that matter. You could see that income groups, roughly these many people, these many earning people in India, and so on. There are number of ways you could look at the same data. So that's my only context. So try and understand the customer segments as much as possible onto your paper. Making sense? When I say customer segments, it could be some dependent people as well. I'm just opening one more avenue. So for example, in the tax department, the primary customer is taxpayer, but there are quite a few secondary customers. For example, the banks who are owning the transactions, the rest of the stakeholders who are also required to do certain things, like acquire their PAN number if at all he's buying anything more than X amount of money and stuff like that, right? So all these stakeholders are also part of customer segment for that matter. Making sense? So for example, auto industry will have maybe their workshops, their showrooms and stuff like that, their partners. So all these are categorized under the customer segments. Making sense? Let's move to the other things. So the customer, we are actually more interested in this section only as on now. So this section is more towards the key partners in my company. So within my org structure, for example, in a REVA kind of a organization, they'll say that, okay, we have a strategic partnership with the battery manufacturer in Taiwan. You know, that is one of my key partner here. But right now, let's not focus on this part. So the key activities my department can take or my company can take is categorized over here. The key resources that I have as a company, but let's not use the whole template completely. I want all of you to use only this portion of the template for understanding the business. The first portion I'm sure you would have tried is trying to categorize your customers. The most important one is customer relationships. So what is the relationship with your customer, right? And what are the different channels through which you could communicate with your customers? So in your case, now that you could say that channels, what could be the channels of communication with your customers? Social networking sites, yes. Emails, phones, print media, boardings, holdings, everything. All these are channels of information, right? And relationships with the customers could be at multiple levels in your case as well. So you could have maybe CAs as one of your customers and stuff like that. So try and fill in only this portion of these three. So once you define these three, then you will be able to define the value proposition. Make sense? let's not go into the value proposition now. Now just write down about these three things. One is customer segments, secondly customer relationships, thirdly channels. Out of these two are more important for this exercise. Making sense? So try and categorize your customers as much as possible. If possible, put some numbers. So this probably it will be about 10 million. This section probably there will be about 10,000. Now the best part. Interestingly, so whenever you know what are your key activities, what are your key resources, key challenges, and you clearly know who are your customers, what are their segments, and actually now that let's try and go a little more deeper. Let's go a little more deeper and say this value proposition will come when the two sides will meet. Okay, so one side is this is what I want to achieve, and other side is this is what my customer segment is, what are their interests also, right? So for example, in the tax section, my customers, given a chance, they'll say I don't want to pay tax is my priority, right? But that's not an option anyway. So effectively, at least make my life very easy in terms of paying to, yeah, okay, not going to the jail is a value proposition, fair enough. So effectively, from the customer side, there are some wants and needs, and from the business side, there is something to be offered, whether it's a product or a service or a message, I don't care. So the moment these two things will start meeting, they'll meet up in a place called value proposition. Making sense? So now I want all of you guys to write down a value proposition that you want to write for that company. I'm talking about now, I'll give you a little more context. So that value proposition has to be, I have named this product that you guys are designing. The name of the product is iCustomer. I stands for intelligence. So all the information about the customer in a single place, which is appropriately available to appropriate roles at an appropriate point of time. If I'm a salesman and a new customer is walking into my showroom, by clicking his picture or asking for his name is the input type, right? Then I don't know what tool I use. I get all the information about that customer. Okay, Atul walks in, I know him, or I get his name, and then magically I get all the information. I don't know how. Whether on a printout, whether on a tablet, whether on, I don't care. Okay, so this iCustomer is the tool that you are going to design, for which you have to think of all kinds of crazy features of your product. So one feature could be, maybe keep them in mind, and iCustomer is a tool that we are designing, for which value proposition, very complex statement, but don't worry. So a value proposition has to be translated into a feature in my product called iCustomer. Any doubts about that sentence? So you have to write down value propositions for features of iCustomer for your own business, and write down about 20 value propositions together in 5 minutes. Number is very important. Try and no, hold on. So the value proposition, I'll give you an example of a value proposition. Because I can offer them discount or their preferred line of products upfront on that day. Makes sense? That's a feature, that's a value proposition. And that value proposition actually comes from both the sides, right? It has lots of business benefits, it has lots of customer benefits as well. So the value proposition has to be, how to check that whether this value proposition is right or wrong? Benefit on both the sides, business side, customer side. That's one, first and foremost. Secondly, that value proposition should be, it will translate into a feature in your product actually, right? So that feature will give a lot of value to the business. So if at all there is a feature called suggesting a appropriate product on the birthday of my customer, so that CMO will say, okay, I don't mind investing $200,000 in this feature, right? So every feature is very expensive, trust me. So don't put in everything. The whole idea of brainstorming now, have you all done brainstormings? Number of times. So again, some ground rules of brainstorming. First and foremost, document every idea that comes in. Whether you want to use a mind map or you want to use write down anything, but document every idea that is coming in. One person speaks at a time. Somebody should be a moderator. no judgment. If somebody says, I have a crazy idea of tiger jumping in, don't negate, right? So other people should add to that idea to make it more beautiful, more viable, more interesting. So no negation, feel free, come up with craziest possible ideas and come up with 20 value propositions. Any doubts? And once you finish 20, raise your hands. And your time starts now. Sure. You should be making use of data. You should be making use of transactions, whether together or individually, I don't care. You should be making use of some data which is available.
Simple, one smart system in a car, training, system in a car. What are the notifications? What are the problem? We'll get our information in mobile and all. You have that's what I that's what
That's fantastic. So another 5 minutes and try and finish the 20. To quickly check whether what you have written qualifies to be a feature. Now, a couple of groups, they thought of very interesting business ideas, but here we are not, for example, in a hotel, we are not designing the campus of the hotel, right? We are designing a tool called iCustomer. Obviously, it has to be an IT tool. Whether it is on a mobile or website or a portal, I don't care, which will be used by the marketing manager or the facility manager or the person who is maybe in the hotel case, this person who might be using the tool could be the person who takes the order. Right? So how he can use information about the customers to do his job better. So that's the final qualifier. So I'll repeat. The feature will qualify to be a feature in iCustomer product only if it is used by one of the stakeholders of the company to use customer information, whether transactional information or interaction information, at any instance, at the time of interacting with the customer, or at the time of business manager taking decisions, next year what should I plan, at any level, at any time. So this tool will enable, number one, it will surface the information appropriately, and secondly, it will enable him to take decision. And if your feature, your value proposition kind of satisfies all these, then it qualifies to be a feature in the product. Make sense? And the next step is, if you want to disqualify a couple of, which is perfectly fine. What we did actually is nothing but this, right? We tried to define a business model. We worked in teams to come up with some brainstorming of ideas which could be part of my product. What we did not do is the user study, requirements gathering. Now just imagine, at this level we are just getting a taste of the whole process, right? So now imagine what requirements engineering, a formal process, could have done inside this. What you could have done is the really physically meeting up with the CMO, meeting up with the facilities manager, meeting up with the person who is in your case taking the order, and then talking to him and figuring out how he gets to know the preferences of the customers, right? So how he's intelligent, he's not a dumb fellow, right? The person who takes the order is very intelligent. He comes over and says, okay, looks like a family, somebody is ordering for ABC items. He'll say, you have kids around, why don't you opt for ice cream, it's good. So he actually does it. So, but our tool on his palm top or a mobile should enable him to do that much better. That's the whole context. Or the CMO or anybody, somebody who is cleaning the toilet, I don't know. Maybe he'll have some information about that. So interestingly, all the stakeholders in the business, you would love going and talking to them, trying to understand their real context, and then asking the same question to him. What information will be useful for your role, for doing your job about the customers? Imagine I have a magical tool. What information you will ask for? And then appropriately present that information in front of him for that role. Make sense? So I would love doing some kind of user study like that, if at all given a chance. Probably value articulation could have been much more elaborate. There are multiple tools on the internet which will enable you to do the value articulation. So there are some formats of the value articulation and so on. You could ideally write a design brief document, right? So what we did was very partially of that. The value proposition chart that I showed you is nothing but a simple template to collect all the information together, so that it can very easily become your part of the design brief document. We should clearly know what is the business, we should clearly know who are the stakeholders, what are they planning to achieve, and then design accordingly, right? So what we did was definitely the brainstorming part. Have you heard of the story writing formats? User story formats. So there is one very popular one which says, let me try and repurpose that in this case. So as a chief marketing officer of Kamath Hotels, I would like to know how many foreigners come in all of my hotels, for that matter. Is one question that I have, right? So this question I am going to ask my data scientist. Or better would be, he'll use a tool called iCustomer on his laptop and he'll find the answers to that. So we are designing that tool. Make sense? So we are designing the tool on the internet anyway, or the computer or the laptop. So next formal step would have been writing detailed stories about all these. So in order to make more taxpayers pay their tax on time, I want to incentivize them, is a big story. So it could be broken down into a number of parts. So how could the benefits be? I could break down a benefit into a couple of more. So if at all somebody files the tax returns in the first 1 month, he gets A. In the first 3 months, he gets B. In the first 1 year, he gets C. If defaulter, he gets -1, whatever it is, right? So that's the way you could probably break down all the stories and write very, very detailed stories about the feature here, and so on. So what you have written is the 20 big stories, for that matter, more or less, right, of the features. So there is a methodology. Have you heard of the product backlogs?
Yes.
So product backlogs, most of you know, is nothing but all these stories in a single Excel sheet or whatever tool you use. So based on the business decisions, the CMO will take a call and say that I see more value in this feature than this feature. So that way the higher value features will bubble up. Make sense? And the feature which is on the top will probably be detailed out much better in terms of the UI. The UI is detailed out, the UI is handed over to the development will probably code it and so on. We are not going to do that, of course, obviously. But that's the whole process. And now we have about 15 minutes. So I want all the groups, individually or together, I don't mind. So sketch a wireframe of iCustomer. Making sense? So try and figure out how my iCustomer tool will look like with all these 20 features. Or you could say that out of these 20, I want to consider only these 5. I don't mind. So one way of making the wireframe is making a overall information map of where things are, maybe a dashboard, I don't know, for a particular role, because that tool will be used by Chief Marketing Officer, it could be used by the CEO, it could be used by, I don't know, somebody on the ground, so who's tax collector maybe, or I don't know, or maybe there'll be a window of your tool information to the direct customer also, sometimes. Why not?
The mapping of tin with the shop number, that is a direct use case to the customer.
So he'll be also happy, exactly.
So because there is no way you know whether this tin number is associated with the shop guy, and the people may play around.
Exactly. So that's the kind of workflow you could make a wireframe of for the customer, end customer, and so on. So now I want you all, I mean, you need not make wireframes for all the 20, or you need not make all the wireframes for all the 20 for all the roles. Just pick 1, 2, 3, whatever is more interesting, and you could probably subdivide your teams. So maybe the CMO and his team members will work for a dashboard for CMO and stuff like that. So is the problem clear now? Next 15 minutes, try and sketch the wireframes. I believe you guys are great in that anyways. Okay, your time starts now then. Start sketching the UI physically. Presentation, it could be one feature that is sketched on this chart paper, or if at all you have some tools, you could make a quick wireframe on a Balsamiq or something like that, perfectly fine. So 10-15 minutes you could build something which could be presentable, and we could